Good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday, August 5th, and welcome to Be the Solution. And today I am very honored and pleased to have my friend, colleague, client, all of the above, Ernst Valery, here with us today. Good morning, Ernst.
Good morning, Maria. How are you?
I'm fantastic. And you up there in Nyack, New York?
Nyack, New York, where it all started, huh? I grew up in Nyack, so I'm actually back here to renovate my mom's house, who recently passed away, and she's like, "Can't sell my house. You got to fix it." So she doesn't haunt us. We're fixing her house.
Okay. So you're renovating it to keep?
Yeah, we have to keep it. Those were
she was serious.
She was serious, and I everything she ever said, I took seriously.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
She must have been some woman.
She was pretty fantastic. I feel like some of the things that I've achieved in life, a lot of the things, it's because of just her tenacity and relentlessness. Like, we've learned so much from her and from my dad as well, but I like my mom more.
So did she instill that in you in an early age? Is that why you're such a beast now?
You know, I think it was ever since I could remember. It's like constant reinforcement of like duty, and it was also like she was so open to people. You know, her home was always open. Like, you know, we had the house where my mom would cook all this food, and I'm like, "Mom, we don't eat this much," but it's like anyone could stop over and have a meal at our house. So it was really like this community thing. And, you know, you really never understand the people, you know, that are touched by a life until they pass away, which is sad because you can't tell them. But like at her funeral, there's people that came up to us and said, "Your mom did this," and like the little things. And it sort of shaped the way I look at development, the way I do my job, and not just let's build a box, but like, how do we build community as well? Because I grew up in a community that my mom created and supported and helped grow, right? It wasn't enough for her kids to do well, but she loved seeing other people's kids do well as well.
So you were the house where all the kids came to?
All the kids came, you know, my older brother and I, like, we were like wrestlers, and so was my younger brother, who's about 9 years and 10 years younger than my older brother and I. And so, you know, we would invite all the neighborhood kids to come and wrestle with us. And so we had just this open neighborhood, and it's a, you know, so I immigrated from Haiti, and from Haiti we landed in Brooklyn, and Brooklyn was like this really rough place, and like my parents were like, "No, we can't raise kids here." And it's not the Brooklyn today that's $1,500 per square foot.
Right.
$1.50 per square foot Brooklyn. And
it was way different back then, right?
It was completely different.
What year did you come here?
I came in 1985, and if everyone remembers, like from Haiti, in 1986, the dictator, who was a second generation dictator, Duvalier, he basically got overthrown. But in 85, people knew that was, you know, rumblings of that were about to happen. And, you know, we got here, Reagan administration, and, you know, it resonates with some of the things that are going on now with immigration. You know, one thing Reagan did right is he allowed a lot of the immigrants to stay. And I have hope now in terms of like understanding that this country is a country of opportunity. People come here to work hard and improve their lives and create a future for their kids. They don't come here for some of the rhetoric that we hear that's going on. And so I'm really pro immigration. I'm pro people building a better life. And I've sort of centered my business around that. And yeah, so we came in 85 and Brooklyn wasn't it. And we moved to like a one-room SRO in Nyack, and my parents had multiple jobs each. You know, when you hear like the Jamaicans in the Caribbean or Haitians having 10 jobs, that was my parents. And like, they worked really hard, and they refused for me and my brothers to, you know, not have a better life. And so education was like everything. Like if you weren't getting an education, that's all they asked of us. And we got to grow up in a really nice place. You know, I was walking around downtown Nyack today. It's right on the Hudson River. And I'm like, man. And I saw one of my friends who I grew up with, who's now one of the fire chiefs here in Nyack. And my brother actually is a volunteer with the fire station as well. And that's where I am, in the fire station in Nyack. And, you know, we just reminisce about, like, man, we got to grow up in this little town that was so reassuring. And, like, if you can't make it growing up here, you know, were there challenges? Absolutely. But we also had the opportunity and positive reinforcement and people who cared. And so I find myself fortunate, and to think my parents had to work like 3-4 jobs each to provide that. And so,
what were they doing?
You know, so it doesn't matter what education you had in your home country. When you come to the U.S., you start over. You know, you hear stories of people who were surgeons back in, like, you know, their home country, and they immigrate here or they resettle here, and they end up like busboys and like working in hotels. And so, you know, I know that my mom worked as the breakfast cook at the Holiday Inn. And then when she was done with that job in the morning, she went upstairs and she was housekeeping. Right. And then from that, she came home and like she
cooked all that food.
She cooked a lot of food and, like, you know, created a life for us. And I know my dad worked at an electrical fitting company, and then he kind of worked his way up to like a foreman, and he delivered stuff for them as well. And on the weekends, he had, you know, everyone had odd jobs on the weekends to kind of make it work. And so work was always important. Education was always important. And also giving back and creating community was always important. And so in high school, I decided I wanted to be an architect. And so my high school principal and I sat on some board together, and I was in 8th grade going to high school, and I told him this. And this is where I learned about, you know, everything's about networking, right?
It is.
And if you can't network and if you can't talk to people, and Maria, that's why you're successful, right? Because you are a monster at networking and talking to people. I remember how we first met. It was like, hey, you're doing this, and you kind of connected me to people that were doing the renovations better than you saw that I could do it. And, you know, and we created a friendship beyond just like the business. And so, you know, my principal was like, well, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I want to be an architect. And like, I barely knew what architecture meant, but he ended up negotiating and getting me an apprenticeship with a local architect, this guy, Michael Esme, in South Nyack or Upper Nyack. And Michael Esme, genius guy, went to Princeton and studied history of architecture, then went to Columbia and did his master's in architecture. He ended up telling me not to be an architect, but, you know, my principal.
Why did he tell you that?
Well, you know, it's funny because architecture is an art, right? And it's like, you know, after spending 3.5 years with me, he's like, you know, I don't think you can do just the art piece. I think your brain works in a macro way. And so that's when I ended up looking at urban planning. So I went to undergrad and I started out thinking I wanted to be an architect, but then I went to the architecture, art and planning school at Cornell. But, you know, talking to Michael Esme, he's like, your brain works in a different way. Like, you appreciate architecture, but you're not an artist like that, like where it's like all you think about. You think about too much when you're looking at a building, right? And so I got into urban planning, and urban planning is really, it's macro. Like, you think about how the city works and all the pieces,
everything,
transportation and everything.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. But the problem with planners is they don't know how the numbers work, right? So they can't ever build anything. They like, oh, we've got these great plans.
And it costs $1 trillion.
It costs $1 trillion, and they don't know how to network, right? So they end up working for a mayor. They end up working for like a private developer or something like that. And I realized that development was where sort of like the rubber met the road. Like, we've got a big idea. We appreciate architecture. So how do we execute it? And development is very much how do we execute it? And so I started in development in Philadelphia. I got my undergrad in urban planning, and then I did a master's degree in public administration because I thought, well, urban planning doesn't get it all done. Public administration is what I need. And I thought, I'm going to make policy. And then you realize it takes years to make policy. And then even when you have the policy in place, you can't implement it. Or
very hard to not only implement and enforce it, right?
Exactly. So you read my mind. And if it's not enforced, it doesn't matter. And I see developers going in and like cutting a deal, and they build it and it works. We're a capitalistic society. And so I thought, I'm going to try this development thing. So I moved to Philadelphia thinking I was going to be a big developer, and I had, ideas of it. I was on Spruce Street, got an office, and then it's like, it didn't work. We couldn't get any of the big projects. Everyone's like, where's your track record? Where's this? They wouldn't give us a deal. And then, again, my mom comes back into the picture. She's like, look, anything worth having, you have to be able to start small. And she's like, why don't you just buy a small row house or two? And I'm like, I don't have the money to buy a small row house or two. And she found, the bank of mattress, Haitian women, older Haitian women, they save their money in their mattress. And she went in their mattress and she literally found $25,000 and she gave it to me and she said, go and do this. And I came back down to Philly after taking a couple of weeks to be with her, and I bought my first 2 row houses. One on Pemberton Street, and I paid like $59,000 for it. And I remember at the closing, real estate did the closing.
Yep.
Vince knew me when I was 22 years old, so about 22 years ago. Vince was like, hey, you don't know what you're doing. I'm going to sell you this house. And I remember someone laughing at me. So think about 23rd and Pemberton. I paid $59,000 for this property, and they were laughing. They were like, we paid $5,000 a year ago, and now you're paying, and we put like 20 into it. Now you're paying 59. And think about Pemberton Street now, how much things are going for. And that was my first project, and I had to get a job in order to get the loan for the project. So,
boy.
Yeah.
Definitely not what you wanted to do.
Exactly. And as soon as I got the loan and I started the renovations, and I lived, and the one piece of advice I would give folks who are getting into the business, and I think renovating a row house is the way you figure out if you belong in real estate or not. If you fail, quit right there and go and do something else, right? But if you can do that row house, if you can go through the ups and downs, I did just about everything wrong in this row house, but I got through it, and we sold it 6 months later for like $155,000. And here I am, 22 years old, 23 years old, and I'm walking out of a closing with over $80,000, about $88,000. And the job that I had, I think I was making like $40,000. And if I was really good, they would give me a $5,000 bonus.
What were you doing?
I worked for Lisa Nutter. Another piece of connection. I fell into it. Like there were a couple professors at Wharton Business School started a consulting firm, and Lisa was one of their senior people. And how about that? And at the time, Michael was just getting into politics and was a councilman, and their daughters were like the 2 cutest girls in the world, and Lisa was amazing. She was so intelligent, and I'm like, it was sad to like leave that situation after 3 months, but I got to meet them and stay in touch with them for a long time. And I remember when we opened something in Center City, Michael was like, I remember you, you're still causing trouble, Think about that, how networking unlocks a lot of things.
It certainly does. I mean, it's always, you don't know who you're going to meet, where you're going to meet them, and what that means, like where the dots are connecting. And the dots connect in so many different ways. That's why people will say, oh, you work with all different prices. I said, yes, we do. We sold something for $12,000 and we sold something for $3.5 million. So why? Because the person that has the little $12,000 lot has a friend that has the $5 million house.
Right. And it's how
Right?
they
It's an investment. It's an investment property. Like, so we help people who need to get to the next thing, right? So it's helping people. That's what, you know, impressed me about you. It's like all the people that you've helped along the way and that you're still helping today, even though you have such, you know, amassed a lot of success. And I think that like people attract like people too, right? At a certain point in time, like you just won't attract all those people. You attract the people that should be in your,
it's who you bring in your universe. And, you know, I'm open to everyone. You know, people almost have to, and I kind of wear my heart on my sleeve, right? And so for me, it's like, you know, I give everyone a chance, because you never know who you're going to meet, and you never know how they're going to touch your life in a positive way. And I put a lot of positive energy back into the world. You know, I always tell people my day job is running a development company, and we build 100+ unit apartment buildings. Right now, we just finished 158 units in Buffalo, New York. We have 496 units under construction in Virginia, and I'm still renovating row houses in Philadelphia and meeting people. And I feel like I came into like an awakening. It's like, how do I give other people opportunity? And so the people I partner with and who you introduced me to in Philadelphia, you know, they're just amazing folks, and their attention to detail. And so I feel like they could teach other folks as well. So one of the things we want to do is we want to launch a fund that invests in people who basically have gone on and gotten a degree in real estate, and they want to come and develop. But like me, you could have all the degrees in the world, and I have a lot of them, but you know, no one's going to give you that opportunity to do your first project unless you have a saint of a mother who will find money in their mattress. That's, you know, and that was probably everything that she had at the time. So we're thinking of building a fund, and we're going to move forward with it, and we're going to invest, and we're going to give priority to people of color and women, because those are the folks that can't just walk in and get someone to believe in them off of like what they're saying, right? And as much as we want to think, you know, and I don't think we think it anymore, because it's been, you know, clearly obvious with the Me Too movement and with the Black Lives Matter movement and what's happening in our country, that it's not exactly equal. And so how can I be a force to making it more inclusive, right? And it's not that we're going to exclude anyone. So like, I don't think you start with inclusion by excluding anyone, but you can say, how do we give people with talent who don't have opportunity, how do we give them opportunity? And so one of the things we want to do is work with students coming out of Temple, and you know, they've got their real estate degree. How do we help them develop that first row house? And because that first success could mean the next 2 row houses, and then from that they could move on to a 4-plex, and then if they can do that, they can move up to 10 units, and then maybe they'll be building 400 unit new construction like we are as well. And so we want to help through that progression, and we want to be that first step. And, you know, your firm plays a big role in that, you know, because you guys see that. You guys are going to be willing to work with someone who's just coming out of school and learning it. And the other thing you do very well, and all the wonderful people that you work with, Maria, is, you know, like I feel like we're friends. Like I know we have a business relationship, but I also feel like this incredible sense of support, and that, you know, we're going to do deals together for the next 100 years. And like, I don't need to, like when I get a property or when I'm thinking of my next neighborhood, I want to have a conversation with you. And I feel like there's that certain level of trust between us. And that's just, you know, what you need in order to succeed. And I'd love to plug people into like that little circle that you've created in Philadelphia.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you. We enjoy working with you and your group lots. So I want to ask you something though, because I think it's important for people to understand. You did the first house on Pemberton Street. How did you do the next one? And then what did they look like following that? And so how you got to do 100 units? Because I just saw that great video that you that you had done about the property that was just finished in Brooklyn, and amazing. And it takes a lot to get there.
We just finished
Buffalo, that in Buffalo, right?
Yep.
That one was in Buffalo.
Yep.
Very, very cool. And the video was awesome. But how do you get, like, how does somebody say, can they say, I'm going to do this house, but one little house, and then I'm going to be building 200, apartment buildings?
I think it's the start that people need, right? And that's why I'm like, if even if you have a degree from, I have a real estate degree from Columbia. And so I could take that real estate degree, and I have an undergraduate degree from Cornell. I could have taken those degrees and said, oh, well, I need to be wearing a suit every day. Like, you take yourself too serious because of the degree, as opposed to saying, okay, I'm willing to humble myself and start somewhere, right? And like, starting somewhere means like, yes, I'm doing a row house, but my mind can do more because I've learned how to do more. So my mind could always do more. It's just, my mom only had $25,000 in her mattress. So realistically, I couldn't start by buying like an old factory in Brooklyn, right? Like, that wasn't like a reality for me.
No, of course not. But it's like
where, like, I could, and I think anyone could start by redeveloping their own community. And that's the other thing. It's like, we have this whole model and approach to development. And I always say that, like, we're an innovation company, development without displacement. So like the neighborhoods, like Grace Ferry would have been further along if there were people that lived in Grace Ferry that had these skills, because they would have started to renovate their own community. They didn't have to wait for someone else to come and validate that community.
Right.
And so the reason I think I got there is being relentless, and also being able to humble myself. And it's also being able to have a vision. Like, you have to have vision. If you look at a row house that's falling apart and you just see a rundown row house, it's really not for you. Then you need to find like an office to go to that's, already done. But if you could look at a community in a neighborhood and say, hey, I could, do little things, and a million little things. And, I'm going to say something corny. Sorry about that. But like, a mighty waterfall starts with but one drop, right? You have one little drop, and then next thing you know, you have a waterfall. And so people have to be able to say, okay, I've got all these degrees and I think I have all this sophistication, but then be able to say, how do I do a row house? And, I could have gone the other way because I had all these degrees, and I came to Philadelphia thinking, well, Mr. Inspector, you're wrong. And I'm like, wait a minute, you don't tell the inspector they're wrong.
How long did that go on for?
Oh my God. And like, I learned that
they shut you down.
They shut you down, right? It's like, you could think you're like this really amazing thing, but you've got to learn how to humble yourself. And you said it in the beginning of this thing. Why do you do a $12,000, vacant, when you're doing $5 million homes, right? It's like, they're all connected, and just it's a analogy of like, we're all connected as people. Having $1 million, being a millionaire, and being just a middle class person, we're all just people. It's really what we put out into the world. And so for me, yeah,
you're right. We're all just people, but everybody gets to decide somewhat, right, what they're going to do or not do, or take action or not take action. Mm-hmm. And you can do as much or as little as you want.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And then it's really, do you work hard, right? So, to get from, I'm up until 3 a.m. most nights, and, I go to sleep for 3 to 4 hours. If I'm lucky, I get 5 hours, and then I get up and I go at it again. And I'm,
So wait, you only sleep for 3 or 4 hours?
3 to 4 on most nights. On good nights, I sleep for 5 hours.
So what do you do from, like, let's say 12 to 3?
It's all the things that you can't do during the day because you're moving around. And so it's like putting the term sheets together. Again, you've got to remember, we've got, a development company that's building $100 million projects.
Yeah, I understand.
So, you've got to write term sheets, you've got to respond to folks. And, I also have this urge to have this legacy where I've helped a lot of people get going in this industry, and I've connected them to good partners, right? And so, like, when we start this program in Philadelphia, we connect them to Remax and Maria's team, and we also connect them to Michael and Monica, who are renovating things. And it's almost like how I went through it. I had all this education, undergrad and master's degrees from these Ivy League places, but my real master's degree was listening to Vince Volpe tell me about, Southwest Center City. And, he was right. He was right.
He sure was.
And he taught me so much about, oh, you can't get that inspection done. How about you do this? Stop telling the inspector what the rule book says. And so, to me, you could have, and so here's the transition. The fact that I had all the book intelligence, I was able to go from a little row house to like a small building to a big building seamlessly, or what seemed like it was seamlessly, but I had to be able to start at that row house. And so I encourage everyone that wants to get into this, even if they want to do really big things, it's the same number of steps at city, the municipal building, the L&I building, to go get a permit for a $100 million project as it is for a $50,000 project, right? You're going through the same permit process, and it's how you talk to people. You could walk down there, and I got so good at it. I don't even know why people can't get permits. It's like, at first, I have a right to get this permit, as opposed to that's another person that's sitting across from you. And if you validate that person, you'll get that permit so much faster. So it's hard work, being relentless, and it's also, kind of recognizing the humanity in all people. And, we don't get anywhere without each other. And so that's a metaphor for our entire country, that we seem to want to tear apart and say, you're this and you're that, by political lines, as opposed to like, wait a minute, we're one country, right? We're one country, and we're only going to make it together. People say it, but then, the same people saying, we're going to get through this together, are turning around and saying, throwing shade on someone that's from a different political party. How does that work? Well,
it's not working out too well, is it?
No.
Right now. No. And I don't buy into any of that political BS. It's just, I'm not going to play the game, and I think you have to kind of decide. And I read something, actually, I didn't read it. I watched this little video the other day, because I've been reading about Stoicism. And I watched this little video about Rockefeller back in like 1857 or something like that. Mm-hmm. And he didn't care about, the whole world was crashing down. It was like I want to say pandemic, wasn't that, but it was financial disaster. Mm-hmm. And he didn't care. He just focused on himself, what he's doing. Everything around is like going to hell in a handbasket. And it proves the power of the only thing that you can control is you. And every day we get to decide if we're going to let what's going on right now outside, Corona, this, that, we could name them. I'm not going to go through it because it's not positive energy for us. Or we could say, Ernst, how are we going to get this thing off the ground in Philadelphia? What can I do to support you? With the students at Temple University, my alma mater.
My alma mater. I mean, like,
yeah, exactly. How can we get this? How can we get that pilot program off the ground? And what do we need to do that? And like, what does it look like? And when can we get it started? Like, that's like where we focus, right?
On the positive, you're right. And when this happened, and I tell everyone, we think of like Maria. So like when this was all happening, the only thing I can think about is, oh, I need to work harder during this time, right? Instead of, how many projects have we done during this pandemic. We've had how many closings?
I don't know, a bunch.
A lot.
I lost track.
We've just been working and working because that's all we can control. And it's also putting positive things back out. Like, how many young couples did we have their first home that we built for them? And now they're in a better situation because they're not living in mom's basement or living in a small apartment, right, or renting something when they could be paying the same amount to own. That person is building equity, and, prices have only gone up, so it's really, you just focus on the positive and you put positive energy in. And I'm glad you said, you want to help, because I think the way forward is to actually create platforms for people to succeed, as opposed to revisiting what they don't have, right? It's like, okay, what's the problem? Unless you're going to tell me a solution, right? We're going to come to the table and find like real solutions for these issues that we're having with, and we can't get past certain inequities that have always happened in our country. And so what we can do is give people real opportunity. The day of giving people handouts should be over. Like, foundations, they're great. Okay, help me kind of get on my feet. But, I always look at the limousine liberal and I'm like, which is worse for folks, right? The staunch conservative that's telling you that pull yourself up by your bootstraps and they don't give you any bootstraps, or the liberal that wants to constantly be the one that's helping you, right? They want to be feeding you. They want to be the ones that run the organization that helps you get to school and everything. And so they go to their wine and cheese saying, look how I helped this person. But you didn't really. You just patched that person up so you can feel better about yourself.
Yeah, well, they didn't teach them how to fish, right?
Exactly.
So they need to learn how to fish so that they can feed themselves and their family,
right,
as opposed to just giving them the fish. And that's what that comes down to.
And they've created rules around how they can't give you an investment. No, we can't invest in you. That's against our rules. Well, who created those rules? You created those rules. So you created a situation where you created dependency. And so
that's how you keep people in check.
Exactly. So I encourage everyone out there that's like, okay, look at who's marching with you, and are they giving you investment? Are they investing in you, or do they want you to be dependent on them?
Right. It's a control. It's a tyranny. Yikes. I don't know. Yep. I said it.
Yeah.
It's got to speak the truth. Right?
If we're going to speak the truth, let's speak the truth on all sides. Right. And I hate to say that because I don't support what's happening at our federal government right now. And I don't support that type of leadership because it's divisive.
Sorry.
But we all have to look at the solutions from within. And then we also have to look at the solutions that we're putting out there. Are they real solutions, or are they really just creating, like you said, dependency and tyranny?
Right. I mean, giving people more money than they make currently, $600 that was getting a week on top of the unemployment. People were lining up in Louis Vuitton at the King of Prussia Mall buying bags, lines down the street. Is that they don't want to come back to work?
My comment on that is I have retail tenants that owned restaurants, and when they were able to open back up, their employees were like, no, we don't want to work because we want to stay on unemployment. Like, that's a disincentive. And now if you listen to the media, because that 600 is gone, they're saying, oh, that was rent money. And I'm like, none of these folks paid rent with that money.
They didn't pay rent.
Took the rent moratoriums and said, oh, I'm not going to pay rent because there's a rent moratorium. So they took that extra money, and who knows what they did with it. If you told me, how do you we destroyed small businesses, and that's because in the way we did this bailout, and we basically looked at big corporations, right? And if you told me, how do I take Amazon? How do I take Walmart? And how do I make those businesses, destroy small mom and pops? First, basically, call those businesses essential. and then call the mom and pops. I mean, real estate businesses, you guys were shut down for how long?
60 days.
Like you show a home, you could have been safe doing that, but Walmart could be open, but you can't show a home. The parking lot at Walmart could be filled with customers because they're essential, but you couldn't have church in a parking lot. So, you know, all these things didn't make any sense. And I was like, well, how do you destroy small business for big business? You know, basically make the big business essential, shut down the small business, and then the big business take their customers and give them $1,200 extra and then $600 a month and tell them to go on a shopping spree. And that's what happened.
I don't know how that got passed.
It got passed because of politics, right? Like everyone wasn't thinking about the country, and that's both, you know, Republican and Democrats. They weren't thinking about the country. They were thinking about how do we get reelected, and how do we not lose our next election, as opposed to being bold and saying how do we lead and get the country out of this. And that's why we're still in it, and other places have been able to get out of, you know, these dire situations. We never thought about leading, you know, and we're sitting back now and saying, well, there should have been a federal response. And I remember early on when the White House basically said, we're going to lead this. And you had state, you know, governors saying, we don't have to listen. We're going to do little coalitions on our own. And I'm like, so they were prepared to fight the federal government if there was like this federal response. And then now it's like, oh, why wasn't there a federal response? And so we got
it is so backwards. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
It's like I can't even listen to it anymore because I'm confused.
And I think the confusion is what it, you know, they wanted to confuse you. Everyone wanted to confuse you. And, you know, I was very troubled by the fact that so many Americans lost their jobs, you know, businesses have shut down and a lot of them won't open back up, but the stock market was still going up and up and up, especially the tech stocks. And it really just shows you how the people in Silicon Valley, it's like they have no soul.
Yeah.
You know, they really, they you know, I don't think it represents, you know, it doesn't represent America. And like, you know, and I can't put a blanket statement because there are some companies, some tech companies that are trying to do more. And I encourage them to look at how to do more and have the conversations about equity between the sexes, equity between the races. They should be leading in that because they're making all the money. We've made it so that they make all the money and they're turning around and, you know, that what are they giving back to America as opposed to when, like you mentioned Rockefeller, you mentioned, you know, some of the, you know, the Carnegies and everything. Yeah, we gave them the ability to make all the money, but I think we pushed those folks to do more, you know, for our society. And I don't think we're pushing the tech folks enough to do, you know, I don't think they're doing as much as they can be, not with the billions of dollars that they're making. You know, they're making, yeah, Amazon made what, $250 billion in the last 4 months? $250 billion in the last 4 months.
Maybe he invented coronavirus.
You know, I don't want to speculate on who.
That's a joke. That was.
I know.
I had to lighten this up.
Yeah. It's
heavy. It's heavy.
It is heavy. And it's not a straightforward conversation. And, you know, we all just have to look, you know, how we can make our neighborhoods better, our cities better. And that's what I'm trying to do. And I'm trying to do it with really good people like you, like Monica and like Michael. And, you know, and if we can get some of these graduates coming out of Temple to start to continue to redevelop some of these neighborhoods, because, you know, we need a small army of people renovating and doing the little things and the big things as well. And so I think my role is, how do you set up the folks doing the little things and help them build wealth for their families, but then, you know, also give them that sense of responsibility to give back and to really look at what they do as development without displacement. How do we keep people in their community? How do we bring in more people? And how do we all figure out a way to live together and have lasting friendships? I mean, like, we didn't grow up the same, Maria, but like we share so much. And, you know, there's this mutual respect and this friendship beyond the business relationship. And we've got to kind of help replicate that all over the place.
Yeah, I think that should be like the main focus for this coming fall. I think there's going to be that this city is going to need some help. Philadelphia, lots of stuff happening here that is not great. You know,
but you got a great city, Philly. I mean, I work in a lot of cities, and you know, 4 cities that we want to launch this program in and this fund, this, you know, reinvestment fund. We want to, you know, Philadelphia, Baltimore. I live in Baltimore, and I really believe in it, and I won't give up on it, despite all the negative that people have about the city. Buffalo, New York. I really believe in that city, and you know, it has great leadership. You know, the mayor of Buffalo, the majority leader of the state assembly, they're just so focused on bringing about equity, and it's always great to have the leadership behind such a great vision, right? And I also feel the same way about Richmond, Virginia. And so those 4 cities we're going to focus on, but this program and this fund is something that we want to do nationally. And so we have our university partners. We're hoping to partner with Temple University. We're hoping to partner with Cornell University and Columbia, and you know, the 2 Cs. They're the schools that I went to, and so you know, I feel a connection.
Wow, you should be able to make that happen.
I think so. I mean, like, you know, and we're looking in Virginia. We're looking at potentially partnering with VCU and with Virginia State University, and in Buffalo, we're looking to partner with University of Buffalo, and so. You know, you could see this as something that we could take to St. Louis. We could take to Chicago and have a local university partner, have a local real estate, you know, brokerage and sales partner like yourself, that knows the community, that also cares and wants to give back. And I mean, I talked to Lisa, and just Lisa knows every street in Philadelphia. And I had this trick where I could name all the streets, you know, all the trees and all the numbers and and I thought I could challenge her, and she got me. We were just like, and I'm
That's
like,
funny.
That's amazing. She's much smarter than me, but you know, women tend to be smarter than men. So you know, I want to have those kind of real estate partners, and then partners like Michael and Monica who just do wonderful work. And you're the one that kind of put me, you're like, Ernst, you can't do this. You know, I remember you walked in there, you're like, Ernst, and you got it right away. It's like, oh, in between renovating this house, I'm going to go and like build a 110 unit apartment building in Baltimore. Right. And I couldn't do that. But can I help? Can I do what my mom did for me for, you know, thousands more people? And I think, you know, together.
Yeah, exactly. Together, because you don't need to be here. It's you have boots on the ground in each community.
Yes.
And the boots on the ground are the people that run what's going on there. And then, you know, there has to be somebody that is the network or the person that puts it all together. Right. And that's why, you know, it's all about we have all strengths, and we use our strengths, and then we fill in the gaps with the people, the right people, in order to put it all together. I mean, that's what a team is, and that's what your team building, like masterminding with other people. That's the whole premise of it. We're actually having a mastermind this evening in my office for some things that we're working on. And so it's like, okay, we're going to have Chip's going to be in it too, because
Chip.
because he thinks of stuff like that is very apparent, but not to me.
Well, common sense is not common, right? It's like, you know, it's not something, sometimes it seems easy that someone just picks up on something, but it takes just having a sensitivity to different things and just being a parent of your surroundings. Because a lot of times you could be a genius, but you could be like that, you know, absent-minded professor. and you don't see everything. And sometimes we have blinders. Too many of us have blinders.
Tunnel vision.
Yeah.
Which is very, very good when you're working in expert status. But when then you have to take that off, sometimes it's really hard, because I always say, like, okay, am I in production mode or am I in building company mode? And they're two different things. And it's hard in the middle of the day to keep switching. So because it's different functions of the brain that you have to pull out information. And it's fine if I'm in production, but then when I have to switch to the other stuff, it's like, okay, wait, I don't know. That's what I've learned about myself anyway.
Yeah.
So we try to compartmentalize when I'm doing this, when I'm doing that.
But
do you do the same thing, or?
The forest and the tree, right? So like, you've got to see big picture, but you don't do anything if you can't sit down and focus. And so when you ask, what am I doing from 12 to 3 in the morning? That's a sit down and focus time, because I could be alone at that time because everyone else is sleeping. Unless it's like my friends in California and I'm calling them but I try to stop that at like 12 o'clock. And so from 12 to 2, 12 to 3, that's the let's execute. But during the day, it's like, let's see the forest. What are some of the opportunities to collaborate, cross-pollination? You do this and I do that. How can we bring that together and do something much better? And so, I think you need both, like you said, and you got to figure out what time of day or what day, what month you're going to be one or the other. But you need both in order to kind of be successful. And I think to answer your earlier question, you kind of need both to be able to go from a row house to, $137 million, 400 plus unit development.
What year was the row house?
The row house was in 2001.
And then how long was it that you did the row houses for?
I did for 4 or 5 years.
Okay, so like 05, 06.
Yeah, and then 2003, 2004, I went back to school, and then when I came out of school, I was still doing row houses, but my thesis at Columbia was, how do I take this row house business, where I could have stayed doing row houses. I would have been, man, if I stayed doing row houses, I'd be on a boat right now, because like Philadelphia, the neighborhood I was in just blew up. I mean, like, you have things in Southwest Center City that are selling for $700,000, and like, I owned a bunch of those properties, and I sold them for $150 to $200. And so it's that experience. I keep coming back to it, and I keep thinking, man, if I really wanted to make an impact in someone else's life, it's to teach them how to do that, and to not only teach them, but to say, I'm going to invest 100% equity in you, so you don't have to go and get the job for 3 months. Although I did meet Lisa Nutter when I got that job. But you can focus on that and professionalize that and then grow. And so I think that's what we're trying to do. And I love partnering with you. Everyone in your office I'm trying to find the person in your office that I don't like, and there is no one in my office. I love everyone in your office, and so it's been a pleasure. And I know I could be a little bit extra sometimes, because I'm like, let's go. But
it's okay. We know how to deal with extra. We're good at that.
But
you know why, right? I'm always extra, Ernst. So wait, I see you have on your mission shirt.
So it's Ministry of Brewing.
Oh, ministry. What did I say? Mission. Ministry.
Ministry. So, my brain.
What's going on there?
We started a brewery in Baltimore, and it's doing really well. And one of the missions of the brewery is to teach kids from, not little kids, like 18 plus, how the brewing process, because that's like an emerging economy. And there are kids from certain zip codes, low income zip codes, they're only going to ever be consumers of that product and not producers of it. And so we're putting together a program where we're going to I mean, we started doing that already with one person, one young man, and soon we're going to start another brewery in Charles City, Virginia, Charles City County, Virginia, and he's going to run that brewery. So, that kid, he's going to be an inspiration to other folks because he's a young man of color running a brewery, and, who makes those connections for people. And so all of our businesses, it's about making connections and being a platform. And it's also great beer. And,
it is good beer. I liked it.
You had it, right?
Go ahead. Yes. And I had the cider because
the cider. And it also brings people together. And so there's nothing better than seeing everyone in a community. And so, aside from mission, or in addition to mission, of connecting people from underrepresented zip code to an emerging market. And I think that's what all these foundations and all these people doing handouts, that's what they should be investing in. They should be investing in finding what that next thing is. Oh, coding is important. Well, how do I go into neighborhoods and I teach kids to code and then give them a job at the end? And it's not just like teach them to code so you could say, oh, I taught that person how to code, and they're going to go to college, but then when they're done, we're not going to give them a job. I had there were a couple professors of color at Columbia, and I had a conversation with them about people of color coming to Columbia. It's $100,000 to get a real estate degree from Columbia. That's a lot of money. It's double what I paid. And, kids of color are not going to that program because of a couple reasons. One reason, when they come out, they're not going to get the top job, right? Because the top job is about networking. And so it's no matter what, it's not about your degree. It's, can you network, and do people feel comfortable giving you that top job? And so if that person doesn't have a shared experience with you, you're probably not going to get it. And number two, no one invests in them. So they can come out of Columbia with a master's degree in real estate, and they could go down Fifth Avenue and walk into every bank there, Wells Fargo, Chase, and everything, and every single one of those banks will say no to them. So what's the point of going and getting this degree from Columbia if you're not going to get the investment and you're not going to get the opportunity for upward mobility? And so, again, this fund that we're creating is to kind of change that paradigm, where we're going to give people opportunity, and we're specifically looking at ways of, getting to meritocracy. And that's like, if you're the best at what you do, it shouldn't matter if you're a woman. It shouldn't matter if you're an immigrant. It shouldn't matter if you're, Latino. It shouldn't matter if you're LGBTQ. You should get that position because you've earned it. And because someone has said, okay, let me try to give you a connection to something that you want to do. And like, my high school principal saw me and he was just like, oh, you want to be an architect? Let me connect you to this guy, Michael Esme. And, when you look at this guy's resume, Princeton and Columbia, and I was like 15 years old in his office, and he's teaching me how to draft. And, I also had to clean all his shelves and everything, but that's like the Mr. Miyagi wax on, wax off type thing. You you learn, you learn all these things. And like, I realized he had me filing all these architectural books, right? And it was the most tedious thing because I had to catalog them and file them, but I got to flip through them. And I know that now when I look at architecture, I can recall some of those things. Right. And so I'm like, wait, what if we did the stairs this way? And so it was like, at the time I was just cleaning up, but I was also learning. So here's to.
It's funny. It's funny how that happens, right?
Yeah.
I think you would like the organization that I'm involved with. It's called Year Up. It's about closing the opportunity divide. And they actually teach kids. One of the programs is in coding, right? And so they take the classes, they get the internship at the company, and then from there they get hopefully offered a job with that company, making a minimum of like $40,000 a year to start. So, and it's mainly from, or deep urban areas. Some of the kids, like when I went to, now the program's different a little bit because of Corona, because now they don't have it in school, it's online.
Right.
But I went to talk with them a couple times, and I sat on the board.
Yep.
And they, like, for one of the examples, a young woman, she was having a really bad day, and I asked Steve about it, and he said, well, you know, she was in a shelter, and she's going to school, and she's taking the classes, and she's going, and I'm like, she's in a shelter. Now, she got out of the shelter into permanent home, but these are where the kids are. One of the other kids, you have to come to school dressed at the time. You had to go to school. And he would say, why are you coming half dressed? And the kid said, well, if I leave my house in a suit and a suit jacket and a tie, they think I'm going to court to snitch.
Right. So think about those perceptions.
Right?
You know what I mean? I mean, like, just
not our reality.
not exactly.
You have to understand what the reality is with these young people and what they're going through. And that organization about closing the opportunity divide, and that's really what it's about. Giving an opportunity, teaching them how to fish. The handouts have to stop. We could teach people how to fish, and they can go and do whatever, as much as they want, of whatever it is, and give them the skill set, give them, you know, at least a shimmer of hope of opportunity. And then they can take, and then now it's on them to decide to go with it or not, right?
Yeah. No, the handouts, I look at it as an abusive relationship. It's like, you know, it may not be physically hitting someone, but if someone is solely dependent on you to make it and you haven't given them any means to make it on their own, it's almost saying like, I'm your only choice, right? Without me, you can't make it. Can you imagine someone putting you in a situation where you may not be completely happy, but you can't leave that situation because they're your only means of feeding yourself? You know, that's, to me, that's abusive. And I feel, and I don't, you know, it's tricky because, you know, obviously, you know, when someone's down on their luck, if a not-for-profit, you know, helps them get into a shelter, and, you know, like, you need a safety net. But if that's the only way you see you can help someone, then it becomes abusive. And that's a slippery slope where it's like helpful and it quickly becomes like paralyzing.
Yeah, because they're not learning. They're not learning anything.
Yeah.
Not being able to.
Thank you for being on that board, but I knew that about you already. We're twins. Like, we think alike, and we value people, and we want to see people make it. And I've never had a group that, like, I feel like is 100% on my side. Like, that, you know, like they want to see me, you know, not that I'm make it or break it. You know, it's like, you know, you're happy to see all the things that we're doing and want to support it, right? And so that's why really wonderful things happen to you and your company as well. And you guys, great success, and you guys are just doing it, and hopefully we can partner and figure out how to, you know, revitalize more communities in Philadelphia, because a lot of neighborhoods need that, and people need homes, and communities need resources. Hopefully I could do a brewery in Philadelphia, and then we can really, like, get to hang out.
That would be super exciting. Yeah. Are you going to be here anytime soon?
I'll be in Philadelphia in about 4 hours.
Oh, you're going to be here today?
I'm leaving Nyack and coming to Philly.
Oh, nice.
So
that's meetings. Great.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, I appreciate you, Ernst. I appreciate you being the solution, because you definitely are. You're somebody who's carried this throughout your lifetime. And it's so great to see your energy and enthusiasm. And even though you, what we call, made it, right? You still give back, you still bring it, and you still want to do more. So that's exciting and it's fun. And I'm very pleased that you're pleased with everything that we do with you. So it's all good.
Thank you so much. And
it's all good. So thank you for being on The Solution. I wish you a wonderful and blessed day. And if you're in town today, stop in.
I will. I'll say hi. I'll have my mask on now. So
yes, the mask. I
know you guys follow everyone around with like a spray.
Well, I got like 20 at my desk here.
The door down, like right now.
Yes, we're safe.
Yes,
we take precautions.
You guys are very safe, and keep it up. Thank you so much. And beyond the business relationship, I really enjoy being your friend.
You too.
All right.
I'll see you soon.
All right.